Thanks for stopping by Pete's Garage. So here we are back with this 440 Mopar that I built last year. I built it for a guy in Pennsylvania. He installed it in a 69 Roadrunner. Beautiful car. Frame off restoration. Gorgeous car. This is the engine that I built. Dyno tested and painted. It dynoed over 500 horsepower. Really made a lot of nice power. He put it in the car. Loved it. He said it was nice and stout. Perfect for the car. And he drove about 14 miles, he said. So with break-in, there could be a couple hours on the engine, maybe. And I didn't have any problems during the dyno break-in process. There weren't any problems. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So he brought it back, put it on a lift, and he went through it with the guy who installed it for him. When he put it on the lift, he noticed there was some coolant leaking on the right side of the engine. Got up close and he found a crack. There was a crack in the block. So, of course, it was heartbreaking for him and me. It's the first time I ever had a block crack like that. And we'll talk more about that towards the end of the video. But what I want to do is, if you run into this situation, my goal really here to put my mind at rest, the owner's mind at rest. What we're going to do is, the owner's mind, what I want to do is, I want to analyze the crack, first of all, and see if we can come up with some reason why it cracked, where it cracked, how severe it is. Is the block fixable? Can you fix the crack? Or is it a boat anchor? Basically what it boils down to. So the first thing you got to do is grind off the paint and remove the core plugs or the freeze plugs. Now as I look at this, there's no real visible crack. This is just a casting mark. This is leftover casting from a poor casting. There's a slight indication of something right here. Really can't tell. So I'm going to have to put some dye on the inside and see how it comes out. I'll put some dye inside, from inside this hole. I'll lay it on its side and see if the dye comes through and see if we can see where the crack is just by using the fluorescent light, black light with the dye. If you watched me build this engine, you saw when I put these core plugs in, these were actually pretty difficult to get out. When I put these in the block, when I installed them, I used Vibratite core plug sealant just to coat the outside when you press the plug in, and it puts a nice coat of sealant on. I'm just sharing this with you now so you can, if you're going to ask what did I use to seal these plugs, that's what I used, Vibratite 550. And a light coating around the core plug, when you press it in, seals it nice all the way around. But it makes them a little difficult to get out. I just have a towel in here, and I want to try and clean out as much as I can. Get it as low as I can inside the block. Just to clean it out to make sure there's nothing left over. Now the next step is to find out really where the crack is. Is there a starting point? Can we see how big the crack is? It's really difficult. And what I have some dye in the squirt bottle that I'm going to be squirting inside these holes. And this is simply a dye that you can buy at any auto parts store. There's two kinds of dye. There's dye for oil, for oil leaks or for coolant leaks. Doesn't really matter now, there's no fluids here, but either one will fluoresce or it will glow when you put a black light up to it. So you're not going to be able to see this because I'm going to have the engine upside down, or I'm going to turn this so these holes are facing down, and I'm going to squirt some of this dye inside here and wait an hour or so just to see if it seeps out and if we can see where the crack is. A couple important things to note. When I took the engine apart, everything was torqued fine. The rods, the crank, the girdle, everything that was bolted on the bottom end was solid. There were no nothing was loose, nothing was out of place. The top end, everything was bolted fine. In another video, I'll go through the cam. We'll see how the cam wore as it broke in. This is an opportunity to actually look at a broke-in solid tappet cam, or flat tappet cam, solid, and with only, I don't know, a couple hours on it, and see how the lifter is broken. We'll do that in another video. But we want to find out this crack. So that's important to note. While that dye is sinking through here, I just wanted to share that with you. Everything was fine. Nothing was out of place. Everything was torqued. There was nothing loose. So let's see if we can find the crack with the black light. So in case you're wondering what the dye looks like when you put a black light to it, here's some dye that's just on a rag, and if I bring a black light close, it starts to glow. That's how it fluoresces under black light. It's got my black light here, and there's the dye. No black light, black light. That's what makes it easy to see and help you find cracks. After a couple of hours, I turned out all the lights, got the black light, and used a 10 power eye loop to slowly go over the surface to see if I could find a crack. And there was not a single crack to be found. Nothing leached from inside the block to the outside. So I switched to a high-powered light with the same 10 power eye loop. I poured over every square millimeter of the block between the two core plug holes. Now after about 30 minutes, maybe even more, of looking, I found a crack. It starts right here. Here's the, move this over a little bit, here's a core plug hole, and I'll move this over a little bit. The crack starts right about here. It's an incredibly small crack. You can barely see it. The crack goes this way, straight across the block. It kind of goes this way, and it stops right around here. It's a good a couple inches away from this other core plug hole here. So there's no evidence of any cracks here. It starts around here near this core plug hole, and it goes this way. The interesting thing to note is that this red line right here is the center of the cylinder. That means this is where the cylinder on the inside, the wall of the cylinder, is closest to the outside part of the block. So if water is flowing through here, or if water is inside here, this is the most narrow portion of the block on the inside, and that is where the crack is. All right, so here's the center of the cylinder right here. And if I go down the center, this is where I drew that red line. So we know that the crack occurred in the most narrow portion between the outer part of the block and the cylinder wall. Could not find anything on the inside of the cylinder wall. Now, if it was cracked, it would act like a blown head gasket. If it were cracked that low, or actually that high in the bore, the exhaust gases would get in the coolant and you would notice it bubbling. So it would cause a problem. So when at the beginning of the video, I said what was the evidence, or we talked about the dyno testing. The first thing the owner asked, he said, did you notice during the dyno test, would it leak? The answer is no, because when you dyno test an engine, you don't put the coolant under pressure. There's no radiator, there's nothing. You're only running the engine for a short period of time, except for the break-in. It reaches about 190 degrees. The coolant is free-flowing. There's no pressure built up. It's flowing through a big tank. So there is no pressure built up in there. So there is no way to pressure test it. And that crack is so small, it would never get picked up with magnafluxing. The only way you'd catch that crack is by x-raying it, which is very expensive. So here's a picture of a crack in a block that I got to replace that. This crack is between the main and the cam bore. And you can see when you magnaflux it, you can see a crack. But a crack that small you simply would not see with magnafluxing. So what probably happened? This would be my best analysis of the whole thing, or what really happened. First of all, this is the first engine that I've ever built where the person gave me the block already machined. For every engine I've ever built, I've always gotten the block, or they gave me the entire engine and I tore it down and I did the analysis. But this block was sitting, I have no idea how long it was sitting. And the owner wanted this block because it is an original 69 casting. He wanted it for a 69 car. He wanted it just to be numbered. I get it. He wanted it that way. But you have no idea when you get a block like this how long it's sitting. And where this crack is, and where it sits so close to the center of the cylinder, that crack right there being the most narrow portion, my guess is that there was still some water left in there somewhere. It was left outside, and up here it gets really cold. It froze, and it put a crack in that block. And that crack was probably really small on the inside. It probably started to crack. And when it was magnafluxed, even if there was a small crack there, it probably would not have been seen. Now, when you put the engine together, you bolt it up, you start it up, it heats up, and then you put 500 horsepower to a block like this, a small crack like that can propagate pretty quickly because there's a lot of stress on the block. I don't know if there's any cracks on the inside. I did not see any inside the bores or inside. Nothing came through there, either with the dye or by inspection. I couldn't find anything. So my guess is it's only on the outside. If it's only on the outside, that means there was water in there and it froze. That's only a guess, but that's my best guess based on what I see here. Now, the other question I mentioned earlier about what else could it be? So here's a couple things for you. I went back, I took the block back, another block that I showed you, the one with the cracked between the main and the cam bore. I took that to the machine shop. Now this machine shop is owned by Mike Janis. Mike Janis is a racing legend around here. He's won national champion, drag racing champion. He owns Mike Janis Superchargers. I'll put the link to his website, his information in the description of this video. Great guy. He's one of the coolest guys I know. Excellent, excellent. He knows everything inside. He forgot more than I'll ever know. Again, that's one of the people. He's one of the people that I'm lucky to know to get help when I need help. And he's the one that dynoed the engine. So I went back and we were talking. I said, Mike, you remember when we were dyno testing the engine and we started up, we were breaking in the cam? He said, yeah. I said, remember we were standing there and we were looking at the engine. So we were looking at the engine from the front. We're in the control room and we're both standing there and we're watching the dyno numbers. We're kind of watching the RPM, the temperature, watching all that stuff as the cam's breaking in. And we're standing there and he says, did you see that? And I said, yeah, I saw that. We saw, as we were looking into the dyno room when the engine was running, while it was hot, the headers were really hot, both of us saw a little poof of white smoke on the right-hand side of the engine. And when he said, you see that? I said, yeah. So I went inside while the engine was running, still running, inspected it. There were no leaks. I could see nothing, no evidence of anything. So that may have been an indication that this was already cracked, and as it was being run on a dyno, a little bit of coolant dripped onto the header. Poof, we saw that little thing of white smoke. But we both wrote it off as maybe there was some water left on it, or it didn't happen again, so we never didn't think anything of it. So I came home and I started looking through the pictures that I took as I was building this, and I found this picture. Now in this picture, you can faintly see a discoloration from either the paint or maybe some moisture or something. This is even before I built the engine. This is just the raw block. I don't know what that is, but it's very close to where the crack is. Very suspicious. So while I was unable to really find something wrong inside the engine mechanically, the evidence of the smoke we saw during the dyno test and the picture that shows a small crack in almost the same exact location, I have to assume that the block was cracked when I got it. And it's most likely from water being left in there. It froze and cracked and left a small crack. Now the purpose of the video is not to assign blame. I'm not trying to blame anybody. That's not the purpose of it. It's out of scientific inquiry. What happened? Where did it crack and what caused it? Because when you do have a failure, it is very important to understand, was it a part, was it a process, or was it the person? Did the part fail? Did the way you put it together fail? Or did you do something wrong and damage the block and crack it yourself? Person, part, process. You got to pay attention to these things. That's why it's critical to take things apart and analyze them. Now, here's a cool thing that we're going to do that I just thought of while I was doing this. I'm going to answer a lot of questions. I'm going to make some more videos. The other videos I'm going to make, I'm going to answer this question. Do piston rings spin when you run an engine? Because when I put the pistons in this engine, I clocked all the rings in the same location, and we're going to put them in. I put them in, and when I took them out, I marked the locations. So next, I'll make a video about if the rings rotated or not when the engine ran. The other video we'll look at, we'll talk about the cam. When the cam is broken in for a solid tappet or a flat tappet cam, what does it look like after it's broken in after a couple hours? Make that video. I think that'll be really cool to show you. We'll also look at all the bearings, the main bearings and the rod bearings with the head gaskets, and we'll look at those to see how those look after only a couple hours of break-in to see if there's any abnormal bearing wear, because there's a lot you can tell from bearings and how the engine functioned and if it worked well. So, some more videos to come. The conclusion from this, I'm going to say it was cracked, it froze, and it was cracked when he brought it here. Unfortunately, that's the case. That's what I think. Of course, that's my best guess. And got another block already at the machine shop. They're machining that. They're actually magnafluxing that, checking it. So I'll have another block, and I'll be really rebuilding this engine soon. But I just wanted to share that with everybody. Couple really cool videos to come. Thanks for stopping by Pete's Garage.